Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today as we discuss the connected factory journey, building momentum through predictive maintenance. My name is Brandon Hatter. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at AssetWatch, and I'll be moderating the conversation today. This is a topic that resonates with a lot of companies right now. The vision of a connected factory is exciting. How an operation where assets, systems, and teams are all working together to prevent downtime before it actually happens. But the challenge isn't believing in that vision. It's actually figuring out how to make the first real step without getting stuck in endless pilots or patchworks of disconnected tools. What we're seeing today is that meaningful progress doesn't come meaningful progress doesn't come overnight. It comes from starting the right foundation and building a plan of connected systems, aligning teams, and making sure insights actually lead into action on the plant floor. That's why we're focusing on predictive maintenance as a starting point and how it can become a catalyst for broader connected factory success. Today, we have a great group of speakers joining us from Asset Watch's product team to explore this from multiple perspectives. First off will be Patrick Harmitchell, Vice President of Product Management and Design. Patrick leads the development of AI-driven solutions that help manufacturers prevent downtime and improve reliability. He's known for turning complex technology into practical, high-impact solutions.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
We're also joined today by Joe Donner, Senior Product Manager who leads mobile product strategy and focuses on how digital workflows drive adoption and execution across reliability programs. And lastly, Samantha Vine, Senior Hardware Product Manager who leads next generation of IoT hardware development and plays a key role in building the data foundation that makes predictive maintenance possible. Together, they'll share what they're seeing across customers, where organizations are starting, the challenges they face, and what changes as visibility into integrations improve. Our goal today is to leave you with practical ideas you can apply as you build momentum in your own connected factory journey. With that, I'll hand it over to Patrick to start us off today.
Oh, thanks so much, Brandon. It's great to be here with you all. Obviously, this is a topic that has been near and dear to our hearts for some time. I know it's a real challenge going from a concept to reality. So we just welcome you, and as we go through this process, the agenda pretty straightforward. We want to address this vision versus reality conundrum that we all experience, where operational reality really becomes a scalable effect because you're able to close workforce gaps, AI and data foundations that really allow you to take action with AI in a practical sense, insights from that action that are allowed to be able to provide greater value, to be able to close an operational loop that's repeatable, and ultimately how you go from a pilot to scale in a manufacturing journey. So let's jump in here with a question and start engaged. All right. So first things first, where are you at today in your connected factory journey? Is it just getting started? You're exploring some options? You're running any pilots? Have you maybe had some challenges running some pilots? Expanding across multiple sites, having seen some success with a pilot, and then scaling into standardized connected systems. Looks like some positive early stage response here around those who are already expanding. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
And some getting started here. Anybody running any pilots or have attempted running pilots and run into problems here? I'm not seeing anybody responding there yet. Give you guys a little more time. Definitely seen quite a bit of excitement, especially when we go to conferences like SMRP and we see ambition and desire to get started, and then we see people running into problems once they try to attempt a pilot. So not definitely seeing kind of a gap between those who are saying they're getting started and those who are expanding. All right. Very good. Okay, so Yeah, definitely looks like we're split between two zones, right? Just getting started, exploring options, and those expanding across multiple sites or asset groups. So it doesn't seem like at this point we have anybody directly running pilots. When we do some Q&A later, that might be something to dive into. So let's jump in and let's talk about this vision versus reality conundrum and where we go next here. On the vision front, it's not hard for people to dive in and think, oh, this makes sense. We want to connect our assets. We want to get ahead of downtime ultimately, and that through real-time alerts and insights that are coming across all operational groups to be able to take action efficiently, it makes sense that we would be able to achieve that objective, right? To fully eliminate unplanned downtime. The reality is that without the right connected tools, in some cases where tools are completely missing from the equation, you're not able to identify the right data to be able to achieve any amount of insight, let alone take action on that insight, which is really what is required for the pilot. You want an ability to actually identify, make sure there's work that's ready, and be able to actually execute against that work with a team ready and willing to do that work, and then be able to repeat that over and over again. And so what happens basically, you've got this issue around the site becomes, uh, this initial pilot that is siloed. There isn't a measurable outcome, and ultimately, it's about whether this is a project or whether this is an actual journey, and ultimately with an end state that we'd like to get to, which is we want to see the reality of a fully automated and functioning, working, connected factory. And so let's jump to the next slide here. Um, the best way to start really is around embracing predictive maintenance as a whole. And I think from the outset, what we see is that there's some words that people to say that are very common, like predictive maintenance, but they're not actually aligned on what that actually means. And it gives manufacturers focus. It's about a measurable entry point. You don't want to have to think about transforming everything across the enterprise. You want to start with a critical asset or group of critical assets. You want to prove some quality, and you want to create a repeatable model. And so, when you think about predictive maintenance, what's really powerful there is it naturally brings together the core building blocks that really start to identify what's required to become a connected factory, let alone multiple connected factories. The connecting assets to data, turning that data into insights, being able to, more importantly, create a workflow that gets repeatable because you have people ready and willing to do the work and the ability to execute consistently, is really a part of that entire motion. It creates cross-functional alignment. You've got maintenance and operations and IT and leaders that can rally around the same kinds of goals. They get to get this benefit of saying, hey, this reduction in downtime and improved reliability, ultimately improve costs. All of this is something that's going to have a direct impact on our ability to produce more and increase, the bottom line. And so these are things that everybody can rally around when they start to see evidence from a pilot. So PDM is not just really just a use case. It's when it's done well, it becomes the foundation of everything that follows.
There is a question in the chat. We can probably get to that in just a moment. So I'll jump in right in. So the operational reality is what I'm going to speak to. So thank you, Patrick, for that intro. That was great. To get the lay of the land and what we're actually looking for here. So unplanned downtime, right? Topic of the day remains one of the biggest costs in manufacturing, and it shows up in many ways: repair time, spare parts, replacements, lost productivity, scrap, and even product spoilage. Across industries, the need to address this is consistent. Top companies lose around 11% of revenue annually from what we see to downtime, which can mean tens of millions per plant in a heavy industry. What's surprising, though, is that predictive maintenance adoption is still relatively low, which highlights a major opportunity. So, at the same time, the challenge is growing. There's an aging workforce, which leads to loss of knowledge, less than half of maintenance being planned, and then teams stretched across more and more assets every day. So, even with better visibility, execution is still inconsistent. So, the real challenge isn't seeing problems, it's acting on them consistently and to scale. Traditional approaches do work, but they don't scale, right? At a single plant with the right team, you can get strong results through expert judgment and manual processes. We've seen it. The problem shows up when you try to expand. Expert bandwidth is limited, Workflows aren't standardized, and the data becomes inconsistent. What worked in one plant doesn't necessarily translate to the next. So the result is predictable. Plant one succeeds, but plant two starts over from scratch. There's no playbook set, there's no momentum built, and every site becomes a custom project essentially. That's the core challenge, not the capability, but repeatability. So at the end of the day, insights and action are only as good as the data behind them. And that starts with reliable hardware. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Sam, who plays a key role in building the hardware foundational to healthy and consistent data that enables AI at scale.
Thank you, Joe. My passion's in hardware, but for the next few minutes, I'll be talking about AI and our data foundation and the importance of having that strong foundation. So, like I mentioned, I've been living in a hardware world most of my life, and I am personally adapting to the AI world around me. I'll break it down simply and give a little bit of AI machine learning 101. So after you feed a machine a lot of data over time, it will start to recognize patterns. It uses those patterns to make smart predictions about what might happen next. So that's the AI part in action. It's machines mimicking human intelligence to anticipate problems before they occur. Within AI, there's something more specific called machine learning or ML. It's a subset of AI, and this is where the true learning happens. Machine learning creates models that are continuously improving as they see more data. They're getting better and better at identifying problems, especially those that signal potential failures, in our case at Asset Watch. So you might be wondering how this matters for maintenance. AI can process massive amounts of sensor data around the clock. The machine learning models can learn from equipment history to improve predictions over time. And together, these two models help direct and detect problems. So in the AI slide of what it does and doesn't do, let's define AI expectations and talk about the gap between the promises of AI and the reality of how it performs in our operations today. AI does certain things really, really well. It's excellent at detecting patterns, especially subtle ones that span across large volumes of data. It helps prioritize our risk assessments so teams can focus on what matters most, and it helps scale analyses, allowing you to monitor large asset populations without increasing headcount. What it does not do as well is replace human judgment in an operational context. It does not execute maintenance work, and it does not perform well with inconsistent or poor quality data, which is why we're continuing to emphasize the importance of good data in is good data out. It also does not fully understand incomplete context around the situation. So what I want you to take away here is that AI highlights problems, but it does not necessarily fix them. And that's where the human element comes into play. We often hear that customers initially expect AI to automate everything, but that's not reality. Most teams are still early in both AI adoption and predictive maintenance maturity, as we saw from Patrick's poll a little bit earlier. So success really heavily depends on having the right data and the right processes in place. It's a super powerful tool, but it needs to work more as a partner, surfacing insights so that your teams can make informed decisions and actions. So one of the most critical concepts when it comes to AI is it's only as good as the data feeding it. To generate reliable insights, we need consistent signal quality, accurate asset data capturing, and continuous monitoring. If those aren't in place, it's simply not going to perform as expected. So on the left, you're seeing route-based monitoring, which does have a place in this world, but it introduces variability. So sensor placements can change, readings can be inconsistent, and it requires strict adherence to schedules from already stretched teams. It takes time away from actual maintenance work. So it leads to potentially inconsistent baselines that make it difficult for the AI models to learn reliably. But on the right side, we have more permanently mounted sensors, which are more of the heart and soul of Asset Watch. These provide consistent, high quality data from the same location every time. They consistently allow AI models to learn, improve, and scale effectively. They're 24/7 continuous monitoring without relying on any kind of manual interaction or manual collection, which frees up maintenance teams to focus on analyzing and fixing issues. A little bit more of a set it and forget it approach. So we can give you a quick example. Advanced building materials where customers integrate sensor data into continuous vibration and continuous monitoring with internal systems. They can use this to drive cost analyses, reporting, and produce executive dashboards, turning maintenance data into strategic insights. So I probably said this a couple times already, but the key takeaway is simple. Bad data equals bad AI. So we need good data to enable scalable insights. Should be getting into poll question 2. So what are the biggest challenges holding you back from scaling predictive maintenance? Are you unsure of where to start, what to do next? Limited on internal resources or expertise? Are your systems not well integrated, like a CMMS and EAM? Is there potentially inconsistent execution on the facility floor itself? Or are you seeing data quality or sensor reliability issues? We've got a lot of folks that don't have, maybe the systems aren't well integrated. Maybe there's some limited resources. Pretty good blend between unsure and inconsistent execution on the floor.
We see an integration.
Nobody's mentioning data quality, which is good because we need good data in to get good data out.
But maybe that's a reflection of maybe like where they are in the data stream. Like obviously, if they might not be concerned with the data if they're getting the data and the signals. That's probably where we come in, Sam. Like where we're the ones that really care, about the quality of the data, and then our customers trust us to deliver that data with insight.
Excellent, Joe.
Yeah,
You got
not super surprised about integrations there. That's a challenging thing,
Yeah.
especially when navigating IT.
well, thank you. I'm going to hand it back to Joe.
Thanks, Sam. So at this point, we've established that the challenge isn't visibility, right? No one mentioned anything about data quality or sensor reliability issues. It's about execution, right? So the alert came in and nothing happened. This is a common reality. Even with sensors deployed and insights flowing, backlogs can still grow if there's no clear path to action. And that's what Jerry was talking about in one of his questions. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Jerry. Insights alone don't create the value. Without a defined process, they just become more noise. So the unlock is simple. Connect every insight to a clear, accountable next step. That means executing in the field, not in a dashboard, using a closed loop workflow and integrating directly into systems like the CMMS so teams can act immediately. That's how you turn insight into action. This is the operating loop that drives value. Detect, validate, create a work order, execute, close, and verify. We're seeing this in practice with a large global chemical manufacturer. They're using this exact loop to drive value, starting with detecting an issue, validating it, and automatically creating a work order in their CMMS. From there, execution happens in the field on a mobile application. The work is closed and the outcome is verified. At the same time, alerts are pushed into their MES system, so both maintenance and operations stay aligned in real time. The key is that this is a closed loop. It's repeatable, embedded into their existing workflows, and ensures consistent action. That's how you move from insight to execution at scale, and that's where the value is created. Now I'd like to hand it over to Patrick. He's going to bring this to life with how this actually plays out from pilot to scale.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's just so true, and it's great to see that poll because actually this particular scenario, this customer, one of the challenges was actually defining, what was required in their pilot, which integration into their CMMS was a critical factor. And then we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But this is really an important loop, right? This repetition, because in the end, an experiment is only as good as its ability to identify what the truth is and how you want to repeat that over and over again. So a lot of organizations they go in for a single save and get excited. But if you just catch a bearing issue or there's a gearbox issue or some kind of a motor In balance, that's some amount of value, but it's not the same thing as building something that's actually repeatable as a program. And so you're talking about unlocks, Joe. This is about when somebody sees a process that works across an alert that comes to a critical asset, and ultimately it's something that is not just a save, it's repeatable and transferable to other similar assets or components. And so that means that every alert has a clear path. There's a recommendation. There's an owner to that. Every work order that's connected, there's an origin of the insight and that the outcome you're trying to achieve, which is ultimately being able to avoid that unplanned downtime in the future, is something that is clearly defined. And then once again, it's repeatable. So, in the end, it's about what alerts can automatically generate work orders, feed the existing system, and then show up in mobile workflows or other forms of workflow that makes sense within your system, so teams can act faster without any amount of friction. And so the pilot becomes a playbook at that point, and then the playbook becomes scale. Let's jump into our final poll question here.
Yeah, poll question number 3. So let's make this real for a second. A lot of good chat going back and forth between me and Jerry. Appreciate the insight there, Jerry. So when an alert comes in, like I mentioned earlier, what actually happens in your world? So feel free to look over these while I'm talking. Drop your answer in there. There's no judgment, but I think we all know where most teams are going to land here. And Jerry alluded to it and called it out very specifically. So yeah, I think we'll find the most here.
While folks are answering, I just want to call attention. There's a couple good questions in the chat. We will answer those in a short minute.
Yep, execution inconsistencies definitely, on the top of my mind at all times when I'm building out solutions for people in the field to use software, AI-enabled tools in order to do their job. Definitely, and obviously, even though we've been working on this for a long time, and the industry has been working on it for probably over a decade now, it's still mostly reactive, right? So the insights are consistently acted on. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of data, rich data that is underutilized right now. And between execution and the workflows that are very inconsistent or just not easily transferable. Sometimes the workflows of a single factory are in one person's head, right? So that knowledge transfer is a key point as well. That's great.
All right, thanks for your participation, everybody here.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to dive in to a real customer example now in the lumber industry. They started reactive with limited visibility. Then they ran a focused pilot on critical assets only to prove the value and then build alignment. Once the playbook was established, expansion accelerated. Plant 2 went live twice as fast, and from there, momentum compounded. They scaled from 1 site to 17 in just over a year. The result was millions in cost avoidance across the portfolio. So the takeaway is simple: start small, prove value quickly, standardize what works, and design for scale from day one. That's how organizations turn insight into impact at scale, by combining AI-driven insights with human expertise. Patrick, if you'd like, would you like to walk through what this means for getting started and the next steps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that final point here, what really wins? We know that technology is a huge player, it's an enabler. And we kind of like to liken it to giving the human superpowers. But it's that human expertise that really allows for you to not just be able to do something well, but do it at scale and ensure that the quality continues to persist and evolve from there. And so, when we look at this, it's that balance of the critical AI and human in the loop. And these are not competing forces; they're very complementary. That's going to be where AI can come in and help with the speed and the scale and the consistency. It's going to help you monitor thousands of assets instead of a handful of assets. You're going to find the subtle changes in behavior you're not going to be able to notice. unless you have the ability to look at thousands of data points at a time, surface patterns that you didn't believe would have been possible with a human. And ultimately, it's just not enough, right? Because it doesn't have context, right? You've got people that have real experience, decades of experience, and they're able to train and create much more value up on top of that AI, because the repeatability is around whether or not the team is going to see how it actually works in practice, not in theory. And so when you start to see signals and the signals are validated by those who have expertise, the change in process, the ways that the team performs, their willingness to accept the change, all starts to result because they see evidence that that those who have the experience are able to leverage what was done with AI in order to take the signal and the noise and actually apply it to real results. So, this is the trusted loop right here. It's the thing that kind of is the sticking point, for us and the culture that we also embody as a company. And we see within the industry for those who are starting to embrace AI in its wholeness, and it's really the fact that just like any human, your evidence of who you are, the fruits of your labor, that's the trust that you are able to afford. You cannot do that without true trust. You can't make these kinds of changes, can't implement new programs like this without the evidence and building trust within these systems and how you leverage AI and the subject matter expertise to be able to do this at scale. So that's really where the juice is in these programs, is to see how these things really scale well together, and operating in concert. All right. We are really excited to jump into questions here in just a little bit. And before we do, I'm going to move to the next slide here, or I'm not sure if mine's frozen. So the exciting thing is that we're going to actually be there on site at SMRP, and so we hope to see you there. But as you go on this journey, having somebody that has been able to do this with you, and so many other providers across the industry, it's important to understand where your readiness is at and be able to evaluate that quickly. So we encourage you to follow through on that, and be able to set up an appropriate approach to your pilot and be able to have a program that really is able to scale when you start to see this evidence, and this virtuous loop that we've been talking about working within your facility, so that you can not just have a vision, but actually see the reality come through for a connected factory. We hope to see you if you are going to be at SMRP, and absolutely we'll happy to connect with you as well on LinkedIn. But we want to do everybody solid here. We have such great activity. Appreciate you guys jumping in here in the chat. We want to jump into some Q&A. So you want to lead that off, Brendan?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. So we have a question here to start. How do you balance speed versus building the right foundation, especially when there's pressure to show quick ROI to leadership?
I'll take a stab at that to start. So it's a great question. The good news is you don't have to choose, right? The way we think about it, you go fast on a small focused set of critical assets rather than the whole entire plant. That lets you prove value quickly without cutting corners on the fundamentals at play. What we've seen fail is when teams try to boil the ocean first. Perfect data, perfect integrations, every asset covered before they've shown anything. Leadership loses patience and then the program stalls. What actually works is proving the loop on a handful of assets, locking in the playbook, then expanding. Our lumber customer that I mentioned went from one site to 17 in just over a year, not because they moved fast on day one, but because they standardized what worked before they scaled it. Plant two went live twice as fast as plant one. That's the return on taking the foundation seriously early. It's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. The next one I have here, and this sounds like a good one for you, Patrick. For companies just getting started, what does a good first pilot actually look like? And how do you know if you've picked the right assets to monitor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to address, somebody had a comment too about, when you've got you have a request top down, and then you've got the issues with boots on the ground as well. And so, a good first pilot, honestly, is one where you're in that scenario where you have a desire from corporate or enterprise saying, we want to go a certain direction. We want to embrace AI, want to embrace predictive maintenance. And then you've got those who maybe have a combination of new, younger workforce, and those who are kind of the older guard and maybe more set in their ways. And there's a lot of consternation. And so, a good pilot really is to actually start with that kind of scenario, because you want to make sure that you are engaging in the reality of what it means to be in a change management situation that's really challenging, and you can show a signal of real value early on. So that's about, once again, we talked about measurability. So people make the mistake sometimes. They're trying to monitor everything. You want to find a specific asset that is problematic, hopefully has a history of failures. There's high maintenance costs, and that's really what you want to anchor on, because you're going to find that earlier win. And anybody that maybe had kind of the consternation of making this kind of a change, and they were comfortable dealing with the continuous problematic nature of that asset or the components of that asset, and they kind of have their own method of managing to that, can get a sense for what it means to be able to address the actual root cause when it's being monitored efficiently, and you're able to demonstrate value when you see that there is an issue before you see or smell something, that someone was able to actually do the work, address the root cause, and that it did not persist as it usually does within a period of time that would be expected. And so that is the scenario, honestly, that's a perfect scenario to go after. And then when you pick that right asset, it's not just about the criticality. You also want to make sure that there's this clear action path, as we talked about. So you're not just looking at the ability to address an issue. It's that your systems are ready, your people are ready, and that there is a closed loop when action is taken after an alert is signaled, that it's resolved, the root cause was addressed, you closed it out, and ultimately you're able to declare victory. And when you actually have done that, even just a handful of times within a single facility, you're going to start to see that those who had consternation about making that change are going to see, okay, we always have limited time, resources, and in many cases skill. It's actually going to make my life easier. And so it's a great example.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. There's a great question from Brian that I wanted to go over. You mentioned using a combination of AI and humans. Why isn't it fully AI? Samantha, do you want to give a stab at that?
Yeah, sure. I touched on this a little bit in our AI machine learning 101 slides. And I've heard a couple times through other people answering questions and speaking, is that having a human in the loop is incredibly important. So thinking about Asset Watch specifically, we have condition monitoring engineers that are the heart and soul of what makes the system very effective. They do more than just review the alerts, they interpret into something that's actionable. So the AI has a really strong data foundation, but sometimes that data needs to be reviewed and massaged through the eyes of somebody knowledgeable that can help reduce the noise that's in the output. I'm sure you've seen this with your own experiences using chat and trying to figure out, no, I want this, and not just giving it a prompt and seeing the output. So on top of that, we need skilled technicians to start the process to even begin with. So it's not just AI, it's not just in the cloud. They ensure the hardware is positioned correctly on my assets to get the most accurate data. And then they can perform health checks over time to continue ensuring that the system is ready for optimal performance. So AI cannot replace physically putting eyes on equipment or putting eyes on a sensor. It's just something that we have to have a human in the loop for. So it's integral to both starting the process and making sure that our outputs are accountable. So AI is great, brings scale and speed to the table, but humans bring judgment and context and action.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And there was a recent question, Joe, and I know you got a quick response on it in the chat, but I didn't know if you wanted to go over that just with a little bit more detail. I noticed that integrations were a key challenge in one of our poll questions. But the question is, how can I generate a good life cycle analysis on assets for leadership when our CMMS has gaps in historical data?
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I put an answer in there because there's kind of a checklist that we go over when there's gaps in the data. You could always supplement it with that manufacturer service life benchmarks, the industry standards, like I mentioned, the ASHRAE guidelines, and then actually input from your frontline technicians who carry the institutional knowledge that I warned about earlier on one of the first slides. You pair that with a condition assessment of your current assets, you can actually build a credible life cycle analysis even without perfect historical data. The key is being transparent with leadership about your data sources and confidence levels so they can make informed decisions in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Go to this next one. Um, how do you balance speed versus building the right foundation, especially when there's pressure to show quick ROI to leadership?
I guess I'll jump in again because that's kind of
Okay.
what I was talking about earlier. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I feel like we touched on that. So I just want to say, like, you don't have to move fast on day one. You have to get a standardization. You have to work with what's comfortable. You have to train up your people. And like Patrick said, I'll just mention again, start small, start with a group of assets that you know a process can be put into place, and test against that process, test the results, and then move forward with an executable plan. And that is where the key pieces come together for a scalable solution.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. And if there's no other questions, I do have one more remaining. At what point does a pilot truly become scalable? And what are some signs that a company is ready to expand to more plants? I know we've talked about it a couple of times today.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a good way to wrap things up. I mean, it really becomes scalable when you see that it's not just one-off success. It's something that is repeatable. So, and that's the entire goal of the pilot, to prove that predictive maintenance is something that can actually catch a failure before you see, hear, or smell anything. And it matters, because it's really about the fact that you've been able to take, and especially like we talked about before, a mentality of reactive, and also preventative, to some measure based on expertise, where you still are operating without any real insight on what's happening on the inside of this machine, without true understanding. And you're turning that into the future, which is our ability to see, hear, and smell things, but without our ability to actually do that ourselves. And the more we're able to let go of that a little bit and see how we can actually identify and repeatedly identify this value, it's something that is really it is creating great ROI, and it's creating culturally, a way to upskill your team to recognize the value of insight and action over reactive behaviors in general. When all of this is codified, it's something that's measurable. It's something that's going to affect your bottom line, and it's going to require everybody on the team to be able to work well together and then benefit from celebrating that success consistently.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It looks like we did get a couple more questions. Let me just go through these quickly while we have everyone on the line.
Yeah, I thought there was a couple. I was trying to go through the chat. It's kind of busy. So, um, yeah, there's a few.
Okay. What do you do when you have pressure from corporate to become more efficient, and you have boots on the ground folks who may be stuck in their ways and are not interested in changing? I know we hear this from
Yeah.
customers pretty frequently.
Yeah, I saw that one, and I was like, "This is this is super common."
Yeah. It's probably the most common like implementation challenge we actually hear about. So, um, it's really it's about it's about focus, and then the second thing is about getting a champion on the floor early. Um, you find those one or two technicians who are curious. You let them engage with the data first, and let them tell their stories to their peers. Peer validation travels a lot further than a corporate mandate. The third piece, final piece, kind of ties back to what we've seen in successful rollouts, starting on assets where the pain is already felt. If there's a pump that's gone down twice this year and cost the team 2 weekends of emergency work away from their families, that's your pilot asset. When the system catches the next failure before it happens, the skeptics will notice, they'll get their time back with their families, and it will last and create a lasting impression. So the reality is change resistance usually softens when people feel like the tool is working for them rather than watching them like Big Brother. The goal is to make the boots on the ground folks look good, not replace their judgment. And Sam, you've had plenty of experience with boots on the ground from your previous lives. I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm laughing a little bit because so prior to joining an IoT startup, I was very heavy into oil and gas, and so I started on the manufacturing floor. I started in facilities all over the world, and I feel it. I feel that question. That was me. The closest thing I had to AI was Google, and that was enough. So I think it's getting out of the mindset of this is the way it's always been and this is the way I'm going to do it, and starting to embrace the change and the positive outcomes that can come from an AI environment. It's something that it can be foundational in collaboration with our hardware that we use on a daily basis. So it's okay to latch on to what you're familiar with. It's also okay to branch out and try new things and start to explore what that can do for you and your business. It's a way to explore making things more efficient than they ever have been before. And that's really, really cool. It's also a way to get time back in your day, which, as you know, if you're working 60, 80, 90-hour weeks, that's a huge savings personally. So I love that question. I love the answer Joe gave as well. Just trying to tie it all together to relatable humans, keep the human in the loop, but also embrace the change and the data that we can implement to support higher efficiency programs.
Yep, awesome. I don't want to, I'm in the background answering a lot of questions that are coming through in the chat, and I really appreciate all the engagement from everyone here. I do want to make sure that everyone else, if you're not, maybe if you're driving or if you can't look down at your screen, I want to make sure that we kind of touch on a few of the main ones that have come across. I appreciate Jerry coming through and asking and providing key information that I'm probably going to steal some of his ideas from this webinar. So thanks, Jerry. So essentially, Jerry was started with asking if we were referring to a pilot PDM program or using Asset Watch. Obviously, we'd love to have you try Asset Watch. We feel it's the best. But really, the first poll question, we were asking for any PDM program. So, and I think people caught on to that. And then, Jerry brought up a great point. The work is maybe less than 50% planned, and it never always goes as planned, and work gets pushed off and things like that. And it comes from cooperation and compromise between production and planning, which are clearly definitely not the same teams, right? And then, you need to know what truly needs to be fixed first. And that's where the insights come in. We connect to your CMMS. We build out the work orders based on the insights from the data and our human in the loop. And then, there's other questions in here. What time frame do you see the work tasking tapering off? It really all depends, right, on the current maturity. We've seen the entire gambit across the North America. We've seen no PDM program. We've seen great PDM programs that we've probably taken a few great ideas from. And we expect the heaviest tasking, though, towards the median of those facilities, to happen in the first 3 to 6 months. Then it tapers as things start to stabilize. And then we do have resource review built in. And then we check constantly with our customers to adjust accordingly and make sure that we're hitting the right mark. And then there was one more question. Can you share the return on investment time frame based on live installs or pilots? Again, that's facility dependent, but we've seen ROI in the first week, days, and maybe even months for many facilities. I think I covered most of those, and we talked about the life cycle analysis as well for missing data.
Yeah, if you're picking the right, we talked about picking the right assets, and making things measurable. You should see the results in within that first 30 days.
Definitely. And there's another question here. So you talked about the gap between insights and actions. What are the most common reasons teams struggle to act on alerts, even when they do trust the data?
I can take that. I feel like I'm talking for everybody, but that's okay. Yeah, the biggest culprit there is that the alert exists in one place and then the work happens somewhere else entirely, right? That's what we talked about with CMS. There's a lot of unknowns, and people are trying to make sure that their CMMSs are connected, and that's something that we take very seriously. There's no defined path from insight to action. There's no owner in these scenarios. There's no next steps. There's no connection to the systems that the maintenance teams are already living in day to day. So even a high confidence alert will just sit there. It's really not a trust problem. It's more of a process problem that we want to shed light on. So the second thing we see is alert fatigue. If everything is urgent, nothing is. I say that to my team all the time. Without validation and prioritization baked into your workflows, teams learn to ignore the noise, and eventually that includes the signals that actually matter. So the fix isn't more dashboards, it's closing the loop by connecting every alert to a clear, accountable, connected next step that executes in the field and closes back in your CMMS. That's when you stop managing insights and start creating value.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. I really wanted to sincerely thank everyone for joining us today. A big thank you to our speakers, Patrick, Joe, and Samantha, for sharing their insights. We really hope you're leaving with a clearer understanding of how to take the first steps towards a more connected factory and how predictive maintenance can help build momentum in a practical and scalable way. If you'd like to learn more about AssetWatch and how we can support in your maintenance and reliability goals, you can visit us anytime at assetwatch.com. If you happen to be attending SMRP later this year, Patrick and Joe would love to talk to you. Be sure to join us on our next webinar on June 10th. You'll hear more from AssetWatch's condition monitoring engineers on that key human expertise that we talk about. And they'll be talking about heat test and reliability for food and beverage industry specifically. The session will kick off our summer sessions, predictive maintenance in action, where you can help master your industry this summer. We'll go deeper into real world applications and strategies you can use to drive results. Thanks again for your time today, and we hope to see you in June.